Hare Krishna. So we discussed Vacho Vegam, Manasa Vegam, Krodha Vegam, and now we have the last three, Jivva Udara Upastha Vegam. If you see in the Nectar of Instruction, the purport, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes, similarly, the demands of the body can be divided into three categories: tongue, belly, and genitals. One may observe that these three senses are physically situated in a straight line. And as far as the body is concerned, and that the bodily demands begin with the tongue. If one can restrain the demands of the tongue by limiting its activity to the eating of prasadam, the urges of belly and the genitals can automatically be controlled. Like that. So then, talking about tongue. Jivva Vegam. The Vega means urge, the uncontrollable desire to satisfy the palate, to satisfy the tongue. What is the problem? To eat palatable dishes in restaurants and sweetmeat shops, unoffered food at unscheduled times in different ways. So we see either to eat palatable dishes in restaurants or to eat unoffered food. Without offering, we tend to eat unscheduled times. So these things one has to consider as a part of Jiva Vegam. It is said, we are what we eat. Yes, we are what we eat. There are different foods in the different modes, mode of passion, goodness and ignorance. We will be studying that in 17th chapter Bhagavad Gita. Depending upon the kind of food we eat, our consciousness develops. Eating the food in the mode of ignorance makes us lazy, morose, very dull, sleepy all the time. Eating the food in the mode of passion creates unlimited desires and hankerings. And eating food in the mode of goodness creates knowledge and happiness. So, one has to understand these things, that one has to eat food which is very, very conducive for spiritual advancement. People ask, what is the harm in eating this food or that food? See, the definition of harm is based on what is your demand. If you are looking to cultivate your consciousness in a positive attachment to Krishna, then you have to eat also food in such a way that it affects your consciousness in a positive way. It all depends upon what you value. If you value Krishna consciousness, then you eat food what is conducive for Krishna consciousness, what is conducive to attain attachment to Krishna. So therefore, this all comes in Jiva Vegam, because to eat foods which are not very conducive to Krishna consciousness, like which is not offered, as Bhagavad Gita says, Yagya Shishta Shina Santa Muchyante Sarva Kilbisha. If one eats food which is not offered, in sacrifice, one eats only sin. One's consciousness becomes contaminated. Unoffered food. And if you eat at unscheduled timings, that is also not very good. All the time eating, even if eating prasadam, consciousness is not pure enough to be able to meditate on Krishna, to do one's services to Krishna, because all the time eating food, it becomes too heavy for the body. So therefore, all these factors have to be considered. Then, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's commentary says 6 kinds. He divides the urges of the tongue into 6 kinds. Attraction to tamasic food, tamoguna, dead bodies. Rajoguna, too spicy. It says katu, amla, lavan, ati, ushna, tikshna, ruksh, vidahina, very dry, pungent, too spicy, too hot. This all comes in spicy food. In 17th chapter in Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned in one of the verses. 8th, 7th, 8th and 9th verse. Then Sattva Guna, that is also an attachment. Milk, vegetables, grains, fresh food. This is all Sattva Guna or the mode of goodness. Ayu Sattva Bala Arogya Sukha Preeti Vivardhana Rasya Snigdha Sthira Hridya Ahara Satvika Priya. That which is juicy, wholesome, tasty, fresh. That is sattvic food, more than the goodness. But that also conditions one to this material world, to a sense of happiness. If you want to create a desire to achieve Krishna, you have to only honor transcendental food, that is prasad. Then there is another urge, which is Mahatamoguna, intoxicants, etc. And then also we have prasad, or offering delicious foods for the sake of satisfying tongue or eating too much of the palatable dishes. Like one time in Bhaktivedanta manner, actually Srila Prabhupada in his travels would take his disciples to so many different devotees' houses. So one time in London, Srila Prabhupada took his disciples to one wealthy man's house who offered a big feast for everyone. And sometimes devotees were going 3 times a day, 4 times a day to attend these feasts. Srila Prabhupada knew how to honor the feast in such a way that person himself doesn't get affected, at the same time the host is honored properly. But these disciples' first experience and too palatable tend to overeat. So one day they went, and when they came back, Prabhupada was seeing how all the devotees are eating so nicely. So after coming back, he called Shrutakirti Prabhu, he's one of his personal servants. And he said, so, devotees liked the prasadam? He said, yes, devotees really liked the prasadam. But some of them have become sick. It seems it was all fried in oil, not in ghee. Srila Prabhupada said, that is not the problem. I saw how much they were eating. So much. And Srila Prabhupada said, see, he ate so many puris, he ate so many puris, he ate this amount of this sabji, and he started enumerating who ate what. Shrutakirti Prabhu said, but Prabhupada, I am also feeling sick, although I never eat much. Prabhupada said, I know you do not eat much, but I saw you also ate 4 puris. So Srila Prabhupada was actually watching his disciples who is eating much. Of course, he likes his disciples to be nicely fed. But he made the point, yes, that eating too much of the palatable dishes. And then invitation of a rich man for the sake of palatable food. One of the instructions to the sannyasi disciple, especially to a sannyasi or renounced order, when he looks at a householder, a rich householder, he should not think, I wish I would have a house like that, or I wish there would be a beautiful wife like that, or all the opulences. So getting attracted to the invitation of a rich man for the sake of palatable food, not thinking of the consequences in various ways on the body, mind, consciousness, that is also an aspect of Jiva Vegam. So as soon as we say Vega, Vega means urge to satisfy. So when a person in his consciousness is not satisfied by spiritual sound vibration, he has not experienced Krishna's association in quantity and quality sufficiently. One thinks one's craving to satisfy one's heart by all these physical needs increases. Sometimes we see the unsatisfied when a person is under stress, he tends to eat too much, or he goes for sex enjoyment, because an unfulfilled heart looks for satisfaction at a bodily platform. So as long as the heart is not satisfied in association with Krishna, in association with the devotional activities of Krishna consciousness, as long as the heart is not sufficiently purified of material contamination, one will go back and keep taking shelter of the material products, of the material urges, thinking that one will find satisfaction. Therefore, we already discussed manovegam. The austerity of the mind is to experience satisfaction. And unless one is satisfied in Krishna consciousness, one always tends to look satisfaction through sense objects. Therefore, solution for any urges give sufficient experience of Krishna. In Jiva Vegam, what is the solution? First thing is control the urge by supplying prasad. Prasad is the food offered to Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna in a devotional way. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhakteya prayachati. So when the prasad is offered, it becomes transcendental. And this prasad has the potency to give one the experience of Krishna. And when one experiences Krishna, as Srila Prabhupada said, the food becomes Krishnized, then one can achieve full satisfaction and the urge of the tongue is satisfied. So therefore, control the urge by supplying prasad. Now sometimes the tendency of tongue is whenever you look at the food you feel like eating, enjoying the palatable dishes. Therefore, very important point is to eat when Krishna gives him prasad. Like one of the senior leaders of Hare Krishna movement came to one of the temples. And the temple brahmacharis thought this leader has come, we should offer him a nice deities Rajbhog, the big plate of prasad which was offered to the deities, absolutely rich, cooked in pure ghee, lot of rich items, opulent items. When this devotee saw, he took little grain out of that, honored it, and then he said, for me, I would like to have simple khichdi. Why? He said, the rich food is for Krishna. But for devotees, since all the devotees are taking khichdi, I should also take khichdi. So a devotee depends on Krishna to eat when Krishna gives him prasadam, whatever kind of prasadam Krishna gives. So his consciousness was whatever all the devotees are given by Krishna, I would like to honor that. So basically, whatever facility Krishna gives and gives you prasadam, devotee honors that. And also honoring at scheduled timings. Eating at scheduled timings. A tongue and stomach which is used to eating at irregular timings, anytime, anything, there is no discipline. And we already discussed the definition of tapasya is methodical life based on regulative principles, purpose to attain real knowledge. So a methodical life. So any urge you have to control, there has to be a methodical life. The vacho vegam, the problem with speech is you want to speak anytime, anything. But there is a regulation, when to speak, how much to speak, what to speak. Mind has to be regulated by thinking of Lord's holy name for 2 hours every day, thinking of Srimad Bhagavatam for 1 to 2 hours every day, contemplating on the pastimes, speaking about Krishna for a couple of hours every day. So that way mind has to be focused, because mind centers around, all the senses are centered around mind. Krodha has to be regulated. One cannot get angry at anyone and everyone whimsically, but only against the blasphemers. Similarly, tongue has to be regulated. What is the quality of food? Prasad. And timing also, at scheduled timing. That is tapasya, a methodical life which helps us to control the urge and focus on the inner principles of Krishna consciousness. Then we have supporting verses for Jivva Vegam. We will show you in the book, in the purport. In this connection, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur says, Sharira avidya jal jodendriya tahekal jive fele vishaya sagare tar madhye jivva ati lobha moya sudurmati tak jeta katina samsare Krishna bado dayamoy kori bar jivva jay swaprasadan dilo bhai sayanamrita pao Radha Krishna gun gao. Sorry, many of you might be feeling hungry after hearing this verse. But anyway, Sharira avidya jal. Sharira refers to body and jal is network. So this body is a network of ignorance, avidya. Body is a network of ignorance. Just like a child, a school in which all the small kids are playing, they have no knowledge how to protect themselves. So teachers have to be extra vigilant how to protect these children. When all the small children are traveling in a bus, the supervisor of the bus has to be extra vigilant because children are ignorant of the dangers. Sometimes they put their head out of the bus, sometimes they put their arm out of the bus, sometimes they start fighting, somebody want to jump out of the bus. Extra vigilant because it is a network of ignorance. Body is a network of ignorance. Keeps demanding, fulfill my desires, vacho vegam, manasa vegam, jivva vegam. In this case, jivva, tongue demands. Jadendriya tahekal. Jive fele vishaya sagore. So Jadendriya is a lump of ignorance and senses. Jadendriya, the senses, they are just leading us to death. Jive fele, the living entity is thrown into the Vishaya Sagare, in the ocean of sense objects. Thrown into the ocean of sense objects. Right? If you see here, in the beginning of Nectar of Instruction, we read this verse, Rupa Raghunatha Pade Hoi Be Akuti Kabeama Bhujabo Se Yugala Piriti. Before that it comes, Vishaya Chadiya Kabe Shuddha Habe Mana Kabe Ama Heribo Sri Vrindavan Vishaya Chadiya Kabe. When we give up the sense objects attraction. So he's telling, there Narottam Das Thakur is praying in that beautiful bhajan, Gauranga Bolite Habe. Here also Vishaya, sense objects, this ocean of sense objects. And out of that, what is the most dangerous of all senses which is throwing us into the ocean of sense objects? Tar Madhya Jivva Ati. What is there in between? Jivva is there. Which is, Jivva means tongue. Tongue is the most dangerous. Lobhomaya Sudurmati. It is voracious and most difficult to control. Sudurmati. It is very difficult, voracious. It is most difficult to control and voracious. Uncontrollable. Take jeta kathina samsare. Kathina samsare. Very difficult to conquer. Jeta, to conquer this tongue in this world. Very difficult. It is the most difficult to control the tongue, to honor only prasadam, to reject tamsik, rajsik, sattvic, but eat only prasadam, to not be attracted to palatal dishes, not to eat too much, to control the quantity. Very difficult. There have been devotees in the past just drinking a glass of buttermilk in 2-3 days. How can we even imagine that? Kathina samsare. Krishna bado dayamoy. Krishna is very merciful. Kori bare jiva jai. To control the tongue, he has given his own prasadam, swaprasad. Sayyannamrit khao. Sayyannamrit. You honor that amrita, the nectarian prasadam which Krishna has given. Radha Krishna guna gao. Glorify Shri Radha and Krishna. Preme dako Shri Chaitanya Nitai. And in love, call out Chaitanya Nitai, Nitai, Chaitanya, Nitai, Chaitanya, Nitai, Chaitanya. So prasad is all about developing attachment to Krishna. So this is the first verse. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's prasadam prayers. Then there is another one. Jivara lalasai iti uti dhai. Shishnadara parayana Krishna nahi pai. It says, that person, Jivvara lalasa, iti uti dhai, Shishnadara parayana, that person who runs here and there, seeking to gratify the palate, who is always attached to the desires of his stomach and genitals, is unable to attain Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya also said, Bhalana khaibe ar, bhalana paribe. Do not dress luxuriously or eat delicious foodstuffs. Specifically to the renounced order and of course to everyone. One has to be careful how the body demands will entangle one. So, bhalana khaibe ar, bhalana paribe. Khaibe means do not eat palatable dishes too much. Bhalana paribe, do not dress luxuriously. Like that. So, Jivva Vegam. These things, these three verses have to be understood. So, one has to honor only Prasad with great love and devotion. But in the process of honoring Prasadam, one has to also take care of respecting all living entities. One has to do it very wisely, not offending those who are offering you food with such great hospitality, although sometimes it's not prasadam. One should deal the situation very wisely in such a way that one keeps his vows of keeping the purity of food, because one should keep in, see about Jiva Vegam, three principles should be kept in mind. First thing is purity is the biggest wealth for a sadhaka. For a practicing Krishna conscious devotee, purity is the biggest wealth. One should try his best not to sacrifice his purity by eating food and eating those items which are not good for his consciousness. As much as possible, try to protect the purity. At the same time, second point is there, one should take good care of his health also. In fact, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says taking care of physical health comes first, then sadhana, in terms of daily schedules. So therefore, one time Shrutakirti Prabhu was fasting on Janmashtami. He was fasting, trying to be as strict as possible, and next day also on Nandotsav, Srila Prabhupada's appearance day, he was fasting. When he came to serve Srila Prabhupada, he was looking very pale. Srila Prabhupada said, what happened? Is your health not good? Oh, I am trying to keep myself austere. So also he was following a very austere diet. So many days austerity and then these 2 days fasting, he became very pale looking. Srila Prabhupada said, what is this? You should take care of your health. Eat proper food. Do not diet unnecessarily. Take care of, do not cut down on your food when not required. Because you have to do so much service. Health is also an important factor. And third thing which has to be taken care is respecting others' hospitality, love, affection and offerings. Purity is the force, so purity is most important, health is important, and also respect to all living entities. One should not be offending others when they are offering things with great love and hospitality, but very wisely keep one's purity, at the same time respect the sentiments. But Jivva Vegam is a powerful urge, therefore it is said the most powerful. Tare madhya Jivva ati lobhamaya sudurmati. Very powerful this tongue. If tongue is controlled, what happens? Tongue, belly and genitals are all in one straight line. Right? On a physical platform. And therefore, if tongue is controlled by prasadam, other two are automatically controlled. So therefore, we say tongue is a very, very important organ to be controlled in terms of eating. Very important organ. It is said, one who wears the neck beads, the tulsi mala, nothing should go down the throat which is not offered to Krishna, and nothing should come out of this throat which is not talking about Krishna. We should try to achieve that standard. This represents we are Krishna's dog, Krishna's servant. Only things in relation to Krishna will go down, and only talks in relation to Krishna will be spoken by this throat. If tongue is controlled by prasadam, other two are automatically controlled. All those who are difficult. Urges of stomach. It is said here, those who suffer from the diseases of stomach must be able to control the urges of the belly, must be unable to control. So this is a disease of the stomach. Again, when we talk of urge means an itch. When there's an itch and you itch more and more and more and more, the itch increases. It becomes a sore. So therefore, itching, proper treatment has to be done. Similarly, stomach demands food. So you say, oh, it is an itch, stop supplying food. That is also not good. Proper way is regulated food. Or you say, keep supplying food all the time, satisfy the itch. No, it's an abnormal hunger. In Ayurveda, something is called as good hunger and bad hunger. Bad hunger is because of some disease of the stomach. Urge is very strong. And too much eating spoils the body, mind, and also consciousness. So therefore, we have, just to prevent the diseases, we have fasting days like Ekadashi, Janmashtami. We can restrain the demands of the body and focus more on Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. So stomach has to be trained gradually. Suddenly you can't stop the supply. So stomach disease. A solution is observe fasting days like Janmashtami, Ekadashi, like that. And then we have urges of genitals. As far as the urges of genitals are concerned, they are legal, proper and improper. When a man is properly mature, that is proper sex life, he can marry according to rules and regulations and use his genitals for the nice children. That is legal and religious. Sometimes they say this is a legal marriage. Well, legal marriage is not just the ritual of marrying, but it is much beyond that. It is for begetting Krishna conscious children, otherwise no other purpose. He says otherwise he may adopt many artificial means. So things like that are discussed in the slide. Problem is unnecessary involvement. And what is the solution? Only to beget Krishna conscious children. Again, this is a powerful urge. In fact, the material world is called as Maithunya Agar. Maithunya Agar. Based on the commentary of Srila Prabhupada, we are talking about this slide. It is the shackles of sex bondage. That is the most prominent force which is keeping the conditioned soul in the prison of family life. It is the embrace and the charming beauty of the beautiful woman or man for a woman, sweet talks of little children, which keeps one bound in the prison of family life where there is no pleasure but just the pleasure of counteracting miseries. And one thinks that is the biggest pleasure. The life goes in counteracting misery by diplomacy, politics, and one takes that to be the pleasure. And keeps suffering, lifelong counteracting miseries, and one personally gets only small amount of pleasure. Whole day goes in struggling. Only for one desire, urges of genitals. Maithunya Agar. Very difficult to get out of this. Only men of less intelligence will succumb to this. So anyway, body is a bad bargain. So it is said, make best use of the bad bargain. Unnecessary involvement should be stopped. Only used to beget Krishna conscious children. So there is a whole process of Garbhadan Samskar, which we'll be discussing at a later point of time. But this Samskar is meant to beget children where men and women come together only for the purpose of begetting Krishna conscious children. So best use of the bad bargain. What is the bad bargain? Having this material body and these urges. What is the best use? Utilize it in the service of Krishna. Perfect use, that is the perfection. No difference then between such a householder life and sannyas life. It is absolutely perfect. Then what? two types of urges of genitals according to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur: legal and proper, and illegal and improper. 5 categories: by thinking about sex life, by planning, by talking about, or actually having, or by satisfying the genitals by artificial means. This all comes in the urges of genitals. So therefore one has to be very careful with these urges, especially this is the biggest force in this material world which is keeping one in the shackles of prison life. So any of this illegal varieties should be avoided by purifying oneself and bringing oneself by the process of tapasya in the service of Krishna. So one has to follow the process of tapasya, methodically restrain for the purpose of reviving real knowledge. People ask, why should I restrain? It's a natural force. People say it is a natural urge of the body. Why should I restrain? But as I already said, just like a doctor says, restrain from a food item because it is not good for your health, or restrain from alcohol so that you can come to your senses and understand your real identity. Under intoxication you cannot. Similarly, under bodily intoxication one cannot understand what is one's real identity. So to understand that, one has to follow this. So therefore one has to restrain the forces. And especially Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave these instructions to Sri Jagadanand Pandit. Or here, this is in his book Prema Vivarta, chapter 7. Jagadanand Pandit says, what are the Jagadanand Pandit's verses? Vairagya bhai gramme katha na shuni be kane, gramme varta na kohi be yabe mili be ane. स्वप्ने ना कर भाई स्त्री संभाषण, गृह स्त्री छाड़िया भाई आसिया छे वन. यदि चाह प्रणय राखीते गौरांगे रसने, छोटा हरि दासेर कथा थाके ये न मने. Vairagi bhai, my dear person in the renounced order, Gramya Katha, do not hear about worldly subject matters. Nashunibe, do not hear from your ears. Gramya Varta, do not speak about it. Nakahibe. Swapne, even in dream, do not think about the woman. After all, you have left householder life to come to one a renounced order. Yadi chaha pranaya rakhite gaurange rasane, chota haridasera katha. Because meditate on the pastime of Chota Haridas, who because of thinking of a woman was rejected by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and punished. Bhalana khai bear, bhalana paribe, hridayate Radha Krishna sarvada sevibe. So do not khaibe, do not eat very palatable dishes, do not dress very luxuriously. And always serve Radha Krishna in your heart with great humility. Sarvada sevibe. So these are the instructions given to renounced order, noted down by Sri Jagadanand Pandit in Prema Vivarta. Should not listen to or talk about worldly things, especially when you meet with others. Do not think of women even in dreams. You have experienced the renounced order of life with a vow that forbids you to associate with women. If you wish to associate with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you must always remember the incident of Chota Haridas, how he was rejected by the Lord. Do not eat luxurious dishes or dress in fine garments. Always remain humble and serve their lordships, Shri Shri Radha Krishna, in your heart of hearts. Very important. Radha Krishna Prana Mora, Yugala Kishora. जीवने माराने गति और नाही मोरा. So my only wealth is service to Radha and Krishna in life or death. That is the only thing I keep in my heart. That is the prayer made by the great Acharyas. Therefore, Prabhupada said, Krishna is light. Krishna Surya Sama. Maya hai andhakar. Maya is darkness, ignorance. If you meditate on the lotus feet of Krishna, your mind will not deviate to any other things. And you will be able to control these urges. And therefore, conclusion is done in this purport. It says, the conclusion is that one who can control these 6 items is to be called a Swami or a Goswami. Right? Godas versus Goswamis. So give up the service of the senses to serve the Supreme Lord, as we discussed in the beginning of Nectar of Instruction. If you have to serve another employer, you have to give up the service to the previous employer. You cannot be serving 2 employers simultaneously at the same time. It is bewildering to them also, to us also. So go means senses. One who is a servant of senses cannot serve Krishna. So Goswami means master of the senses, who controls the senses and dovetails his service propensity in the service of Sri Sri Radha Krishna, Sri Sri Radha Ras Bihari, Sri Sri Radha Gopinath, Sri Sri Radha Giridhari. Servant of the senses cannot become a servant of Krishna. Prahlad Maharaj says, Matirna Krishne Paratasvato va mitho bhipadyet grihavritanam adanta gobhir vishatam tamishram punah punascharvitacharvananam. Matirna Krishne. Somebody who has decided to dedicate his life for sense gratification, for involvement with the urges, very difficult to convince him to worship Krishna, either by personal endeavor or by counseling or by joint conferences. You cannot, because he has developed his life Adanta Gobhir, just servant, Adanta Go, servant of the senses. Punah punascharvitacharvananam, chewing the chewed, activities which he has already done in his whole life, just chewing that and thinking this will give him pleasure. So the conclusion is that one must leave the position of Godas and take the position of Goswami, master of the senses. That is the first step to qualify for spiritual advancement. Until one takes that leap of faith and stops serving senses and strenuously endeavor to control the senses. This is an interesting point. Lord sees the endeavor. Success comes by the mercy of the Lord. On our side, he sees a strenuous endeavor to control the senses by avoiding contact with sense objects and trying to focus on Supreme Lord Krishna, trying to become Godas to Goswami. Lord is very pleased if we try to do that. So therefore, text 1 focuses on the subject of mind and sense control, and it comes as a part of the first element of bhakti, that is Shraddha. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Rupa Goswami ki jai. Samavet Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.